in spite of public protests, it is clear many leaders in American government think the founder of Wikileaks is a criminal.
I hope the Justice Department will soon indict him and that we will be able to extradite him from Britain and bring him back to stand trial in the United States.
I think that the release of this information has put at risk American national security.
One politician even called Assange a high-tech terrorist. So how can one person's terrorist also be called the ultimate journalist? For perspective on that, we go to Ray McGovern, who is live in Washington for us. McGovern is part of a group of former CIA members who recently wrote a letter praising Assange's actions. So thank you for joining us tonight. Why do you think Assange is doing the right thing by releasing all these documents?
Well, I think the question as to whether he's a journalist or not is the proof is in the pudding. The function of a journalist is to record the actions and behavior of those in power and make it possible for the public to know what's going on. Thomas Jefferson said that if it were a choice between a government and a free press, he'd pick a free press. And so this is what's needed to preserve a democracy, and the idea is to tell as close to the truth as possible and not simply take notes on what the government is saying. That's what Julian Assange and Wikileaks have done to the embarrassment of the government, because a lot of their dealings are kept in secret and need not be kept in secret.
So you don't like the label, you don't like the way he's been labeled a terrorist or a hacker. You actually do think that he is a journalist. I want to get that correct. You think he's a journalist?
Of course he's a journalist, according to the definition that I just listed here. He's making information available to the American people and others who are, frankly, malnourished on what I call the fawning corporate media, who act more as stenographers than they do as journalists.
So you don't think there's information in those documents that should have been left out or maybe blacked out that may be detrimental to the country, maybe detrimental to our troops or even other countries? Because that's what journalists would have fact-checked, and there are standards, and no one wants to put people in danger and in jeopardy. I think that's what most journalists would have done. Julian Assange didn't do that.
Well, I correct you on that. He did do that. He made that information available to the Pentagon and the State Department, and they refused to expunge it. They refused to redact it. Now, what has been released? It is a canard. It is a red herring to suggest that lives have been put in danger. The only lives that have been put in danger are the troops that we sent over to Iraq and Afghanistan under false pretenses. Now, the Secretary of Defense, Robert Gates, has said that these reports about lives in danger are greatly overwrought, his word, okay? He said that no sources and methods have been compromised. NATO has said the same thing, and our command in Afghanistan has said the same thing. Not one person has been identified as having been spat upon, much less imprisoned, because of these documents. Now, that doesn't mean that the pundits here in this country don't say it 10 times a day. Saying it 10 times a day does not make it true.
His attorney said the same thing on the steps of the courthouse, that this was a setup, talking about the charges in Sweden. This was just one way to get him into custody, to keep him there, and that this is what journalists should be doing. So you really think we, and I'll say we, I'm a journalist, you think we have it wrong, and that he is actually not a pariah? We should be praising him and following his lead rather than calling him a pariah?
Yeah, actually, with all due respect, I think you should be following his example. Seek out the secrets. Find out why it is that my taxpayer money is going to fund trafficked young boys performing dances in women's clothing before the Afghan security forces who we are recruiting to take over after we leave. Take a look at the documents and see the abhorrent activities that our government has endorsed or done through its contractors, and then tell me you don't think the Americans can handle that. Well, I think they can handle it, but they can't handle it if they don't have it.
All right, Ray McGovern, thank you. Appreciate your time. That's going to have to be the last word.
You're most welcome.
When we come right back here, a closer look at the cyber attacks launched in support of Julian Assange and just how vulnerable we are as internet users. Plus,